All right, welcome back, our Florida Football Insiders podcast. We are now going to preview game of the week in the state of Florida, the annual cocktail party in Jacksonville, Florida, Georgia. Number one rated Georgia, number one team in the country, both teams coming off of a bye week, playing a kind of a little bit of an improving Florida Gator team. And no better person to talk to all things Florida Gators than Kevin Brockway from the Gainesville Sun. He covers the Gators, the Gator Beat. And welcome back, Kevin.
It's good to be back as always, and big week obviously for Florida, number one Georgia. I mean, it doesn't get bigger than that. This is kind of game that can define a season if Florida goes out and plays pretty well and can somehow shock the college football world and pull off an upset.
Yeah, the Gators coming in 5-2. Again, they win a shootout before the bye week in Columbia, 41-39 over South Carolina. Encouraging performance for me from an offensive perspective that they were able to match, keep scoring points and all that good stuff. First question I want to ask you about, talk about the emergence of Graham Mertz in the last 3 or 4 games. He's really starting to play better. The offense is really starting to move a little bit. Give me a little sense of what the coaching staff and the Gators think how Mertz is progressing.
I think Billy Napier made a good point after the South Carolina game and being in that, they're playing better around him. Now, listen, the offensive line still has a few holes, and we'll see this week if Kingsley Agakin can come back. He's been banged up all season, but they have rested him the last couple of weeks. And I think the offensive line still has a few holes here and there and some inconsistency. But you look at the receiver position, you look at what Ricky Pearsall is doing, Eugene Wilson being back and providing that playmaking threat, the speed, and Arla Sportingham, the tight end, and Hayden Hansen have both given Florida, a receiving option at the tight end position that they have not had in the Napier area before. So I think it's a combination of those things. And obviously Graham is, he's a very intelligent kid. He's a very accurate thrower. He showed when he had to make some throws downfield, he did. Khalil Jackson did kind of stumble on one of them, but he came up with one. And he's playing a little better too. And, they're without Caleb Douglas, who was, one of their better receivers coming in. But some other guys have stepped up around Graham Mertz and have played well. And I think Graham is certainly done a great job of moving the chains and keeping the offense going.
Going into this bye week, what are the 1 or 2 things that Coach Napier and the staff has tried to get out of the bye week? Obviously, health. We always understand. We always want to get healthier and all that. But schematically or just personnel wise, is there anything that Coach Napier has mentioned about the benefit of the bye week?
Yeah, I think in most areas they're just kind of looking for gradual improvement, fundamental improvement. You would think. I think the defense has slipped a little bit from September. And maybe some of that is, getting more film and figuring some things out. I think the pass defense in general has kind of lagged here and there over the last few weeks. Some of the tackling too hasn't been as crisp as it was earlier in the season. So I think that's some areas too on that side of the ball that they need kind of maybe to work and refocus. And again, maybe the rest will play into that and they'll get back to playing more physical. The pass rush on this team right now is not very good. And I think that's an issue too in terms of, they're last in the SEC in sacks. They're just not getting to the quarterback consistently enough to affect them. And a guy like Carson Beck, who has come on and played really well, I think you're going to have to do that to kind of rattle them, to keep Georgia from scoring points. But it also starts with stopping the run. And that's an area I think with Shamar James and Scooby Williams, and some of their interior guys, Cam Jackson, where they've been pretty good in the front seven stopping the run.
Another guy I want to mention that's really come on, it's really been a big impact player for the Gators the last month or so has been the kicker, Trey Smack. He's really solidified that position. He made a bunch of long field goals. Was it the South Carolina game? I believe he made 4 field goals over 44 yards, something like that. But he's had a great run the last month. Talk about how just the confidence level, knowing when you get in the red zone, you're most likely going to get at least 3 points.
Yeah, he has been a nice revelation. And I think, don't forget, last year, I do think he had kind of a groin issue, so he was banged up a little bit. So that's why they went with Mahalik. And Trey was handling kickoffs. I was told in practice last year, probably a little inconsistent with his field goal, but he seemed to have found it. But he's got the big leg. He's got 2 54-yarders this season. He's 2 for 2 from beyond 50. which is for a college, kicker.
Right.
That's pretty great. A 5 for 6 overall from beyond 40, and the one was blocked against South Carolina. That was the only one.
Right.
So he has certainly brought some consistency to that position. He's brought a big leg. And, special teams wise, the last couple of weeks, they haven't really had any major miscues. I think they've been growing and progressing in that area. They have a lot of young guys on the return units and in coverage. And they've probably done a better job and grown as the season has gone on to, where, before it was a weakness. And now I wouldn't necessarily say it's a strength, but they're not doing things to really hurt themselves there.
Right. What do you see? Just what's the recipe for an upset this week? What are the 2 or 3 things that if the Florida does these things really well, this game will be a game in the fourth quarter?
Well, I do think that they're going to have to force some turnovers. I think that's the best way to stay with a team that's probably more talented than you is to, cause miscues, cause mistakes. I wouldn't necessarily say that this is a turnover. That's another area too with the defense. I wouldn't necessarily say this is a big play turnover defense, but I think they're going to have to find a way to generate that, to get some momentum in the game. And I think for, offensively, just balance, establish a run a little bit. But I think Graham Mertz in the passing game have shown the last couple of weeks that they've been able to be effective through the air. I mean, it's certainly coming in with a lot of confidence. You score, 38 against Vanderbilt, 41 against South Carolina. I think you've shown the last 2 weeks that, you can put points on the board. And if Gator fans, they like seeing points on the board. That's kind of their MO. But this is certainly going to be a test facing, one of the best defenses, if not the best defense in the country, and 2 pretty good defensive minds in Kirby Smart and Will Muschamp.
The Gators have a little benefit. They knew Brock Bowers wasn't going to play for 2 weeks, so that's from a scheme and a game planning perspective. They've been able to game plan this for a couple of weeks. Obviously, Bowers is the guy you had to game plan against with Georgia. They've got good players other places. I get it, but they don't have the elite All-American kind of guy that they have that they had at tight end. How do you think that will dictate how? Will Austin Armstrong be a little more aggressive as far as blitzing, not afraid to play man-to-man a little bit more? Or do you think they will stick to kind of what they've done, whether Bowers was in the game or not?
Yeah, I think that you could see a little bit more pressure on the quarterback, but they haven't really blitzed a lot. They're more of a, they bring the, they call it the creeper defense. They bring a lot of simulated pressures. So you could see some more pressures from the linebackers, from the defensive backs as well. To kind of throw some things off there, without necessarily the receiving threat at tight end that you have with Brock Bowers. You might be able to afford to do that a little bit more, but I still think, you take a look at, Ladd McConkey, you take a look at, some of the other receivers that they have. Certainly it's going to be, it's still going to be a lot of tough covers. And I think that, Carson Beck has really shown progress this year that he's shown he's been pretty much on point for most of the season.
And talk about the rivalry a little bit. Obviously, this is probably one of the I don't know if Gator fans think the Seminoles are the number one rival, or if it's Georgia. Probably Georgia, when it comes to an in-conference SEC opponent, Georgia's the rivalry. Just talk about the rivalry a little bit and what the Gator Nation thinks of this rivalry being in Jacksonville and the excitement level that this game brings to both programs each year.
Yeah, it's great. It's great to see the stadium, half and half, and certainly, you go in the parking lot. There's a lot of revelry, and it's really big for the city of Jacksonville. I know they want to keep it. Certainly, there could be some renovations in the stadium the next couple of years there, and if there is, then you might see it campus site in a few years. But financially, they're ponying up to keep it in Jacksonville because it just means so much for the economy there, and it means so much for the hotels and everything else. And I think the alums in South Georgia, certainly in Brunswick and Savannah, like it there too. So I think you're gonna see it stick around there. But yeah, it's really, it's amazing how cyclical it's been when you think about from 1990 to 2010 how Florida dominated. In the 1980s, Georgia dominated,
right?
And 2010 on, it's been Georgia dominated. It's been a little bit of a mix, 2010 to 2015, but well, the last 6 or 7 years, it's been pretty much all Georgia. So I think Florida would like to, tip the scales and see if they can get this going. Billy Napier is a Georgia guy. He's, from a small town in North Georgia. So, he's got a lot of families there. So he's got a personal connection to it. So I think that adds to it a little bit as well.
And say what you want, it's a big opportunity for Florida. If you win this game, you're going to have a leg up in the East. I mean, you're going to have the head-to-head with Tennessee and Georgia. So, I mean, I know most Gator fans, people around the country don't think this is potentially could be a great game. But if Florida can win this game, they have a real opportunity here to pull a stunner here in the East.
Yeah, and I saw the point spread last week on down to something like 22 or 23. I think that's a little high. I do think Florida's going to give them a game. I'm not saying they're going to upset them.
Right.
But it could be a 1 or 2 score game in the fourth quarter. I think that, certainly with Bowers being out, and I do think Florida is going to get up for this game. And, both teams have the bye, but I do think that they'll give them a tough contest. Maybe I'm wrong. No, don't take it to the bank. But
No, I mean, but it's a good point. With Tennessee losing over the weekend, you have, this is an opportunity here for the Gators, and again, another opportunity for a massive signature win for Billy Napier. He beat Tennessee earlier in the year. You beat Georgia. You can really make the statement, hey, we're pretty close to being back, and there's been some good recruiting news. Any good recruiting nuggets the last 3 or 4 weeks?
Yeah, well, certainly McCray. I mean, that's a huge get for Florida, the pass rusher. And I think he certainly adds a lot to this class in terms of, when you look at the number of pass rushers in this 2024 class, I mean, that's really where Billy is building it, on both lines of scrimmage. So that is definitely a big get. Lorente McCray from Daytona Beach, 5-star edge rusher. That's only going to add to the talent. But you even take a look at Billy Napier's class last year, and you look at Kelby Collins, you look at TJ Searcy, they're contributing on the field. Look at Eugene Wilson, arguably one of the best freshman receivers in the country. So I think Gator fans are definitely on board with how Billy Napier's recruiting. I think the big question is the play calling, the coaching.
Right.
That's kind of the next step to see if he relinquishes play calling duties or not, and how the offense is going to run moving forward.
Sure. All right, I want to ask you one more question. We'll get you out of here. Basketball question. I know basketball season is getting ready to tip off here in a couple of weeks. Give just a quick synopsis of the Gator basketball team. I saw a nugget where they played maybe a practice scrimmage game against Miami and beat Miami down south. Did I read that right?
Yeah, 91-89. They went down there and they beat them. And listen, hey, Miami was a Final Four team last year, and they're bringing back 3 starters from that team. So certainly impressive. I think Riley Kugel going into his sophomore year, he showed at the end of last year that he's a guy that can create his own shot. He's an exceptional offensive player. So I think, he's what you build around. He and Will Richard are kind of the nucleus coming back, but you look at some of the transfers they brought in. Tyrese Samuel is a big man, is a very skilled guy. He had 19 points. I've liked what I've seen from him in practice. Alex Condon, the freshman from Australia, is another guy I think he's going to contribute and be pretty good. They got a 7-footer in Micah Hanlogden. So they've got some size and depth in the front court this year that they didn't have last year. And then, certainly Kugel in the backcourt and Richard. And then a couple of transfer cards. They brought in Walter Clayton from Iona, who played under Rick Pitino, is a very savvy player, can shoot. And also Zion Pullen from UC Riverside. He's got a little NCAA suspension thing for playing in Portsmouth the first 3 games of the season, but he'll be on board. He'll be an offensive threat. So I think you've got some building blocks there, 5, 6, or 7 guys for a decent rotation.
Well, Kevin, you do a great job, man, covering the Gators, both basketball and football for the Gainesville Sun. Tell everybody where they can find all your great work online.
Yeah, Gatorsports.com and Gainesville.com.
And I'm sure Kevin will be in the building on Saturday in Jacksonville covering the game. So enjoy the cocktail party and have a great weekend covering the Gators and the Bulldogs.
Yeah, appreciate it as always. Thanks for having me.
All right. We'll be right back with Mark Weiser from the Athens Banner Herald, giving a little Georgia preview as well. Stay tuned.